This is a fun presentation, okay? So we're talking about the history of water rights and the basics of water rights. So just because it says basics in there doesn't mean it's going to be real boring, okay? So the origin of the prior appropriation doctrine has a long sordid history, right? So as Mormon pioneers began first to settle the valleys of this great state, they soon developed an interesting history of fighting over water. So anywhere you go throughout the state, you can find the early settlers came in, they established their practices, and then without a doubt, fights ensued. And there are many people probably in this room today that know people that you're like, I don't really want to associate with them because of water practices that they do, right? And I don't know if you have any ancestry that helped establish Utah, but you can go back and read their journals and you can find stories along those lines. So the development of the laws governing water in the western United States was different than the east. As you can see, the west is dry and the east is wet. So we have these two versions of water law that we kind of look at, and that's the riparian law and the prior appropriation doctrine. So in the east, where there's a lot of water, the landowner is allowed to use any water that comes onto their property within a reasonable amount, right? And this has influences in English law, and again, there's lots of water available, okay? And in the west, we use first in time, first in right, which is influenced by mining law, and it has to deal with the scarcity of water, and there's always a defined amount of water associated with a person's water right that they're allowed to divert and use, and that's to help people stay in line and be good stewards of the limited resource and be good neighbors and work cooperatively. So for Utah, the historical appropriators of water first obviously were the Native Americans that came in, and they were very good stewards of the water. They used what they needed to accomplish their tasks, and they developed ditches and different conveyance systems to irrigate their crops that they raised for their sustaining of life. And then came in religious and military outposts, Spanish, American, other explorers in the area, and they utilized some of the systems that were constructed by the Native Americans. And then after that, in this state, in 1847, as we all know, the Mormon pioneers came in and they began establishing their water practices, building larger systems, canals, dams, other things of that nature. And while they were doing that, there was gold discovered in California. So then people started coming across the United States to California, and they began developing their water systems. And along with those, you have people running cattle, again, to help support the population that was booming at that time. And then you have people that wanted just to come out to the west, get away from Eastern philosophies, I guess, I don't really know, and create a homestead here in the west. So again, the prior appropriation doctrine is based on the basic principles of mining law, which are, hey, if a person comes in and they're the first people to develop this, they're first in time. And their development is now protected because they're first in right. And so if someone comes in and goes upstream and tries to divert their claim away from them, then the later party is at fault and needs to yield to the prior appropriator of water. In 1866, the Mining Act was passed. This was a fundamental step to the deference to state and territorial water law with the passage of this act. Under local customs laws and court decrees, this result was obtained even though many of these appropriators were trespassers on federal land. So this act allowed the local users to kind of dictate how the water was used and where it was used. In California in 1872, we have the first appropriative water right statute that was passed. And it had several requirements. It required posting of the point of diversion, and then you had to also file with the county recorder's office saying, hey, this is where my water right point of diversion is, and this is how I'm using it. And they had to perfect the water right through due diligence. So they had to put the water to use, and they had to continually use it. and water rights that weren't used could be lost through non-use. And then we have, in 1877, we have the Desert Land Act, where the Congress declared that the right to use water in the western United States by claimants under the act must depend upon bona fide prior appropriation. The U.S. Supreme Court held that the effects of the Desert Land Act was to sever title of the water from the public land. Congress directed the rights to use water be established under state and territorial laws separate from land ownership claims. So you notice sometimes I read what I have written out. That's just kind of who I am. But really, I'd like to be more off cuff. But stuff like that, I like to make sure that we get it exactly right. So I will read some of my notes here. Okay, so after that, state government started to take a larger role in the development of water right law and regulating who has rights to water rights. Wyoming was actually the first to start doing it. They formed a state agency to have more of a comprehensive set of laws, and this was in 1890. And so that state agency was involved in administering all the appropriative water rights. So the key features are, first, the requirement that an application must be filed, which was new because prior to that, people were just going and just starting to use water. So now we need a documentation filed prior to use of water. And then second, the necessity of ruling on an application by the state agency. So now the state agency takes the application, reviews it, and says, yep, go ahead, you can use that water for what you propose to use it for. And then third, the state agency is a repository of all these applications so that any party can come in and review the applications that have been filed and evaluate their own projects that they want to construct. So Utah has a very similar code that was enacted in 1903. Okay, so here are some fundamental development tenets of developing this arid land under prior appropriation laws. The land and water estates are established as separate. So if we look at the east, right, with the riparian law, you had land and had water on it. That's your water to use. In the west, you can own land that is far away from your point of diversion, right? Y'all probably work with canals and conveyance systems where the point of diversion isn't anywhere near where the land that is being irrigated is, or the cattle that are being watered are located. So that was not really new, but that's a fundamental tenet of development in arid lands, right? You have to have water is somewhere else, and you bring it over to different land, okay? And if you own some property and there's a spring on it, you may or may not have right to that spring. It all depends on if there's a valid water right associated with that spring to be used on your land, okay? Okay, so prior appropriation doctrine, as enacted by the state of Utah, contains some key features. First, water must be diverted and put to beneficial use. Second, you must uphold the principle of first in time, first in right. And third, a water right can be lost either by abandonment or forfeiture. So abandonment is someone willingly saying, I don't want this water anymore, they give it up. And forfeiture is action taken through the court system where another party files and says, that person's not using their water right and haven't done so for 7 years consecutively, so their water right is in forfeiture, and I would like the state to take it away. Okay? So then we have water distribution by priority date. So here we have an interesting graph. This is just typical hydrograph of a river system. And so one thing that I'd like to note here is that, yeah, we have the priority system, right? So everyone has their own priority. But most rivers have a decree or a court order saying these are classes of water rights. So this is what this slide represents. So you have the first priority, which is 1873, and that's not just one water right. That could be a collection of a whole bunch of different water rights, okay? So that could be hundreds, thousands of, maybe not thousands, but hundreds of water rights under that first priority. So they share in their losses. So here we have the irrigation season. Is it easy for you guys? You can kind of see it. So on the left-hand side of the graph, I don't know why I turned around. I feel like I coach a whole bunch of rec soccer teams, and I'm always like, okay, let's use our left foot, and they don't. And now I feel like that kid where he can't figure out which is his left and right foot. Anyway, I'm getting off track like always. So here we have, if you look on the left side of the graph, you have April, which is when the irrigation season starts, and first priority water rights have a 25 cubic feet per second limit there, but the flow is not up to 25 CFS. So what happens is all of the first priority water rights take a cut, a commensurate amount, okay, based off of whatever they were decreed of within that class. Then once it gets above 25 CFS, all first class water rights are full, are whole, so everyone can divert, and then now second class water rights can take a portion of the flow. Again, a commensurate amount based off of what they've been decreed from the court order there. And then again, we go up another level. Once it gets above 90 CFS, third priority water rights kick in. And then if you look at this graph, it's kind of interesting because third priority water rights on this particular system, and this is a hypothetical system, get cut off at 160 CFS, but there's still some flow up above that. So what happens to that flow? Can somebody appropriate that? Can somebody use that flow? And the short answer is yes. And the long answer is yes, but it's very, very rare that they get that opportunity to use anything above 160 CFS. So again, if you want to file an application on that amount above what's in the system, feel free to do so, but understand that you will be limited to 6 days on a good year. So, yes?
How would the water users know that there's like this extra water?
Oh, hang on, wait, sorry. There's a question procedure.
Sorry.
You have to use a microphone for the people online.
Okay.
Thank you.
How would the water users know that there's extra water in the system that they could use this extra water?
Perfect. So they would, we would publish the data, like here's the stream flow, and then we also have all the records. Like I said, the state engineer's office is the repository of all records. So they would either rely upon adjudications that we did that say here's the block of water that's approved for use now. Then they look at the stream and they'd be like, okay, well here's a little chunk that's up above what's approved. Or they'd have to do their own compiling of water rights and do that. But we do a pretty good job of compiling that for people and putting that out there on our website. And if you can't find, I'll talk about it a little bit later, like in fact, it's in 4 slides. I'm going to talk about who to contact and ask questions of that nature. And they will help you out because that's what we do. We offer help to everybody that wants help. Okay? That's a great question. Yeah, thank you for asking that. Feel free to ask questions at any time. Or if you want to make a comment, feel free to make a comment. So, okay, so we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk about the division. So we went over the history and some basics. Now we're going to talk about the division of water rights and how we operate. So the first state engineer was Willard Young, who was the son of Brigham Young. He was Blake's back here, and actually this is all language that Blake wrote for this particular slide, and so that's why there's a lot of information about his graduation record from West Point. Blake's a military guy, and he was an officer in the Army Corps of Engineers. Anyway, so Willard Young was a state engineer for a short time. In 1897, he stepped down from being state engineer because of the Spanish-American War. So we've passed through several state engineers since then, most of them serving at least a 4-year term, some of them shorter. The current state engineer is in her first 4-year term, and which expires next February. So if you like what she's doing a great job, reach out to the governor and tell the governor is a man, tell the governor that you appreciate what Teresa is doing as state engineer so that she can get reappointed, because she would like to be reappointed. So anyway, there's my pitch for Teresa, but she's not in the room, so someone tell her that I said that. Okay, so within the division, this org chart is a little out of date. but essentially it works. So we have the state engineer. We now have 2 deputy state engineers. Blake Bingham is one that's in the back of the room, and the other is Jared Manning. And then we have 5 assistant state engineers, of which I am one of them. And you will hear from, I think, another one of them. And then, so under the deputy state engineers, we have the regional offices. And there's 7 regional offices throughout the state, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. And then you kind of see how things lay out within our division. That's not a test question, but it's just interesting. Okay, so here we have the 7 regional areas. And you're going to hear from one of the regional engineers next in the next presentation. You'll hear from 2 others later today, or maybe one tomorrow. I don't have the schedule memorized. But this is who you call. So you have a stream, and you're like, I think there might be some extra water on this stream every 9th year, and I want that water, right? So the regional office, you go and you say, my system is in Sanpete County, okay? So you go and you find Sanpete County on this map, and you're like, okay, well, which part of Sanpete County? I think I'm in the 65 area. Okay, so that's the Richfield regional office. So that's who you'd call and talk to, and one of the staff there would help you work through your question, okay? And that's any question about anything dealing with water rights. I mean, I guess you could ask them anything you wanted to, right? But like how to raise a teenage daughter, but I don't know how great of information. They're all engineers, so I don't know how great advice they'd give you. Let's see. Oh, crap. I'm all off on my... let me go back. Red goes back. No, I'm just going to stay where I was at. Okay. So there's applications. No, I will go back. Sorry. So if you notice here, there's 2-digit numbers in all of the areas. So these aren't counties. These are boundaries that we've established. Some of them are based on river systems. Some of them are based on geography. Okay, but we've established them with some reasoning, and we've given them at somewhat random of a nature these 2-digit numbers. So every water right file jacket that we house in our office has a 2-digit number to help us identify what part of the state it's located in. But really the important part on a water right file is how it started out. So some of them started out as applications to appropriate, and if that's the case, then it has a capital A and then a 6-digit number, or is it 5? It's a digit number. I believe it to be 6 at this point. If there's a change application associated with it, you'll have 2 application numbers. You'll have the big A, which is the application to appropriate, and then you'll have the little a, which is a change application on that application. Or you could have, if you look at a water right and there's a big D on there, that's a diligence claim. A diligence claim is a water right that was established prior to 1903 or prior to 1903. And they made a filing with the state either at that time, or you could file a diligence claim now and say, hey, my ancestors have been using this water prior to 1903. Here's all the evidence. Give me a diligence claim with the priority date of 1848 or whatever date after 1847. Then you have a capital U, which is an underground claim, which is very similar to a diligence claim. I think I talk about this in a few slides. But anyway, so there you have diligence claims which deal with surface rights, and then you have an underground claim which deals with, obviously, underground water rights. And the dates for establishing those statutes are different. Yes, question over here, Jim.
Are these the letters that are on the DWR site underneath the change application, like the little A that's usually in front of it? Or where are these letters that you're talking about? Where do we see these?
That is good. And if I had control, I would get off of here and go to our website. But yeah, so on our website, you'll always see like the water right number at the top, which is the file jacket water right number. And then right in the middle at the top, there will be the big A, which is the application number, or a D or a U, which indicates like the important value of the water right. And then below that to the left, that's where you'd find like the little a, which is a hyperlink, which takes you to the change application information. So you're looking at our database, so you're following along. Jim, yes?
I was just going to mention tomorrow I'll be presenting on stuff on the
Awesome.
website, so we'll be going through all of this.
Cliffhanger. Okay. You'll have to come back tomorrow for that. I'm not going to answer it anymore. It's too complicated. It's not complicated at all. Okay. No more questions before we move on to water right basics? Over here again. Yes.
There's also a water user's claim.
Yes, there's a water user's claim, which who's the adjudication staff that's going to talk about that?
Mike Drake.
Mike Drake, the other assistant state engineer. Okay, perfect. So he'll talk about that today or tomorrow. Tomorrow. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So like I said, 1903 is when Utah water laws were enacted. It's a fun history. If you're bored with my presentation right now, you can go look it up. But basically, the federal government said, hey, you guys, if you want money from us, you guys have to establish a law. And so, wouldn't you know it, we wanted money from the federal government, so we established a water rights law within the state. And that's where we got, and I talked about diligence claims. And there was, in 1903, when this was established, there was still some uncertainty regarding groundwater uses and also regarding landowner riparian doctrine claims. Okay, so, dang it, sorry. I'm good at technology. So in 1936 is when we see the enactment of the underground law, okay? So all new uses of groundwater, however, are now subject to the Utah water laws that we have in place. And that, to go again, now instead of a D, we have the U, which is the underground water claim. And I'm just going to read that quote at the bottom. Rights to use water are not obtained simply because water exists upon or beneath property or passes over it. Such rights would be riparian and are not recognized in Utah law. So that clarified the riparian issue and the groundwater issues that were still up in the air after the establishment of the doctrine in 1903. Okay, so Title 73 is the Utah code that dictates how our office operates. Here's an important thing that you'll need to remember for something tomorrow. All waters in this state, whether above or under the ground, are hereby declared to be property of the public. So that's found right there in the beginning of Title 73. And a person may acquire a water right that's an unappropriated water right through the public process, through filing an application. And then beneficial use is the measure, the limit is the measure and the limit of all. I'm reading the slide and my notes at the same time, and I'm just going to let you guys read yourself. So, but it's the beneficial use is the measure and limit of the water right, and that's an important fact. Okay, so, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Okay, so here are the key elements of a water right. I'm not going to go over them right now. I'm going to kind of go over them one by one of the important ones. So first, let's talk about ownership. Ownership obviously is very important because that's the person that is entitled to use the water for whatever the application was approved for or decreed for or whatever the water users claim says it's for. And ownership can be or must be transferred by deed, assignment, or decree. And a water right is appurtenant to land unless it is not. That's one of my favorite statements with water rights, right? So an application is filed, it's for a particular piece of land, that water right is appurtenant to that land, but then someone comes in and says, I just want to sell the water right, I don't want to sell my land. So they can then sever that water right from the land and sell it to somebody else, and that person can file a change application and move it to wherever they want within reason, obviously. So our office is not the official office of ownership. If there's an ownership dispute, that is dealt outside of our office. We just say, hey, there appears to be a dispute, go deal with that yourselves outside of us. The county recorder's office is the official office of record for ownership of water rights. Okay. I guess one thing I'll say before I start talking about priority is that if you are dealing with any sort of transfer, please make sure that you do your due diligence with the county recorder's office, not with our office, and definitely don't rely on our database for the information, because our database ownership is not the official office, not the official record, and may be wrong. Okay, so priority date is, sorry, I'm just going to get back on track with my notes here just in case. Okay, so priority date is probably, again, one of the more important aspects of a water right. It's what says you can use water when your little brother can't use water because he was born after you, and you don't have to share because you're protected by law, right? If they have a younger priority than you, which is nice. I'm the youngest of 4, so it wasn't nice for me. But if you're a junior user on the system, you don't like the prior appropriation doctrine, other than you have some other new protections in statute, which Nathan is going to talk about, or maybe Chase. That's irrelevant. You'll get it. It'll come. Okay, so again, I think priority is pretty self-explanatory, and it's super crucial. So here we have water right flow and volume, so we use both, okay? There are some water rights that are defined by flow. There are some water rights that are defined by volume. There are some water rights that are defined by both, okay? And they are limitations. So if you have a water right that's for 1 acre foot, that's all you can use during your period of use and at your place of use. If you have a water right that gives you a flow of 1 cubic foot per second, that's all you can use during your period of use and place of use. If you have a water right that is 1 cubic foot per second but has a limitation of 10 acre feet, you can flow up to 1 cubic foot per second, but as soon as you hit 10 acre feet, your water right is done, okay? And again, that can only be used during your period of use and at your place of use. Okay, so now we go to point of diversion. There are many points of diversion. There are rivers, there are streams, there are springs, there are drains, there are wells, there are seeps, there are sloughs, okay? And they're all defined. They're all defined by meets and bounds. Come on in, Levi, find us open seat. And they are defined with using the public land survey system. So it'll be 500 feet north, yes. On the last slide, perfect. That's my game show slide. I like to do that slide. Right there.
Sorry.
Is there going to be discussion about a water right written in terms of CFS? Let me go back. So we had a client who had a water right in terms of CFS that it was, they needed full beneficial use, we felt could be written in terms of acre feet rather than in terms of the CFS. We needed to meet a peak demand, which was higher than the CFS, but the acre, anyway. Is there going to be any further discussion on beneficial use and these terms of CFS versus acre feet and how to fully utilize the water?
No, just kidding. Yeah, we can talk about it right now. That's fine. I'm just going to guess you're representing or working with a municipality. Perfect. Is it in the Utah Lake area? Oh, okay. I thought maybe it was the one that Chase and I talked about a few months ago. But so if a municipality has a flow and their flow limitation is, say, again, like 1 cubic foot per second, and their volume is, just to say the full amount, 724 acre feet, and that's, rounding math. Those are their limitations of that water right. So under that particular water right, they cannot divert more than 1 cubic foot per second or that volume. So, but, I'm going to say a lot of so's and buts, okay? there's probably some wiggle room there. So if they need a peak demand that's like a little over a cubic foot, they could incorporate a different water right with it. I imagine they have multiple water rights. So it's kind of a shell game, right? That's with water rights. You can move things around to the benefit of the water user. It's just important that the legal description allows you to do that. So you may have to file a change application that incorporates all of their water rights into like a big portfolio. That then it gives you more flexibility. Sorry, I keep hitting the microphone. Gives you more flexibility on how to operate the system. But yeah, so, and you're probably very well aware that we regulate that on an annual basis, right? You submit the report, you say, here's our water rights, and here's the volume we submitted that we used this year, and we verify to make sure that it's equal to or less than that amount. Now, we don't track flow records from a well, right? Like you don't submit meter readings saying this is how the flow was, the variable flow going up and down throughout the year. But if it comes into question, and it goes like to court, that will be verified through a court system, right? So if somebody says, hey, they're pumping more than their cubic foot per second, now you're going to have to submit that information either to us or to the court for verification. So we can understand. Does that answer your question? Okay. Because I could keep going, I guess, but we did this, right? We did points of diversion. All right. Here's beneficial use, and these are all. Yes. Question over here, Jim. Just throw it. Whip it across.
I'm just going to apologize to everybody. I'm super new at this, so this is very interesting. My boss is over here laughing at me. If there's no CFS limit, if there's just an acre foot right, I was barely understanding and trying to learn what the gentleman was just talking about. Can you just pump as much as you want up to that acre foot as fast as you want? Or I guess I was trying to understand the reasons why you were asking your question. And
yeah. Within reason, I mean, there are other concerns that we look at. So if you have a well and you have 1,000 acre feet in that well under that water right, you could pump that all as fast as you want. But if you're interfering with a more senior user, then you probably can't do that, right? So if you injure a senior water right in your pumping procedures, then there's an issue there. But yeah, you could take that entire volume all at once, or over a shorter period of time. But so if it's a municipality, that's a year-round use typically. So you really don't want to pump all of it in January. So you kind of want to spread it out. But yes, to answer your question, yes. So it is important when you file an application that you do it in a way that gives you flexibility and allows you to utilize your system to best meet the needs, okay? All right, so here up on the screen we have these typical beneficial use types: irrigation, obviously, stock watering, domestic, municipal, and then we have other uses, okay? Other uses are such as commercial, industrial, power, mining, or whatever, okay? We also have like storage that could be a beneficial use as long as it's used for recreational or fish culture. But again, the measure and limit of every water right is its beneficial use. So you have to have some beneficial use tied to your water right for it to have, I guess, value is what I'll say there. Okay, so here we have an example of a water use group. Here's the beneficial use. We have 3 water rights. I fix that every time I look at this slide, and then it always gets messed up for some reason. Okay, so here we have water right 05 5000, which has a sole supply of 125 acres. And then next to it you have water right 05 5123, which has a sole supply of 45. And the next water right 05 5486 has a sole supply of 25. I'm going to pause right here for a second. So if you notice, there is a dash in between 05 and the 4-digit number after, and you noted that I didn't say it. So this is what I always put out there. When you call up to our division and you say 05 dash, and then you say a number, automatically, I mean for me, I don't know about for other staff, but automatically for me, I just think, okay, this person doesn't understand water rights. But anyway, that's just an aside. I typically when people say dash, I'm like, okay, this person is new to water rights. So anyway, So I omit dash. Feel free to do it however you want to, but that's an aside on this slide. Completely unnecessary and not a test question. Okay, so these 3 water rights constitute a water use group, and each of the water rights have a sole supply for the total irrigation of 195 acres. So that's the value of each individual water right. So if you wanted to file a change application on one of these water rights, you would look at the sole supply, and that's the amount of acreage that would have to come out of production, depending on what the change was. Okay, so each of these water rights would have an assigned diversion, which is a duty value, and a depletion, which is the amount of water that is consumed. Okay, and depending on the beneficial use, you have different diversion and depletion values. So how much water does it take? So here we have, these are estimates, okay? So again, we look at this. This is another map of the state that we put out, and it's colored. And up in the upper right-hand corner, you have the duty values, and they range from 3 to 6. So that duty value is a representation of the amount of acre feet is typically required to irrigate an acre of land. Now, does every water right in a given area have the same duty value? And the answer to that is no. You can have a water right in the 51 area, which is a 4 duty, but it has a duty of 2. So when doing your research on a water right, we strongly encourage you to look at the historical documents of record and make sure that the duty is either typical or figure out what the duty is. And yes, question over here. While he's walking up to you, I'll just say there is always a document on there that will, not always. The majority of the time, there's a document on there that defines what the duty is for a given water right.
Okay, that was my question. Is there a line on that water right printout that indicates what the duty is for that water right, if it's not always necessarily the duty of the area?
So on our database, we do, that is public facing. That's not public facing. So the answer to that question is on our website, no. We don't put that on our website.
Is there a reason for that?
Yes, and the reason is because it's not necessarily always true, and so to get that duty value, we'd have to go in and evaluate the water rights. So hopefully you're looking at water rights that have a decree on them, that have some sort of document on there, administrative action by our office that defines the duty for you. But if you're looking at a proposed determination of water rights, sometimes there is here's the acreage and here's the acre foot limitation of this water right. And so now you're like, okay, there's the duty for that water right. So that is.
You can back into it.
Yep. So you just take the acreage, divide it by the limitation, and then you get the, the other way around. The limitation divided by the acreage, then you get the duty value. Okay. Yes, over here. You guys are in a hot competition for most questions asked. There is a prize.
I'm gonna have to win that one, I imagine. I guess I'm wondering why, the Salt Lake area is in the middle of all this green, and it's got a 5. And then also, how does this work with xeriscaping and things like that? Because I'm seeing, I work on the development side of the world here, and so turf versus our xeriscape has a different duty that a lot of times cities are bringing up.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I'm hoping that maybe you can just touch on that and why 4, and anyway, and if this is being updated.
That is a loaded question, and I don't have nearly enough time to talk about the theoretics of that. But essentially, it was a court order that said this is a 5 in the Salt Lake Valley, and the other is a 4. Is that accurate enough, Blake, to move on? General adjudication. Yeah. So through processes, it was established as a 5 in the Salt Lake Valley. Your other question was about xeriscape. Okay, so within a municipality's water right, if it was established as a municipal water right from its birth, so an application to appropriate for municipal use, is considered to be 100% consumptive, so they're allowed to divert their full amount and consume that full amount. So within the city system, switching from turf to xeriscape is somewhat irrelevant because their diversion amount would just go down as the irrigators use less water to irrigate xeriscapes, right? So they can then push that water to other uses. I know it's kind of a looping answer to your question. And I see this is your boss here, and he's giggling at, because he's probably dealt with this very thing like, what? Oh, sorry, I'm not allowed to swear. I've been told not to swear in presentations before, so what the crap is going on, right? And this is being recorded, so anyway. Did I answer all of your questions? There was like 3 or 4 questions in there. Okay, but xeriscape does have a lesser duty, but again, you have to kind of look at how to manipulate and use that water right within your system, so you can maximize the potential of your water right. Okay. So here's some other typical duties. So for a domestic unit, we use 0.45, and that's based off of 400 gallons per day for a connection. And then we have a part-time cabin. When part-time, it says cabin on there. That's why I said cabin, but that's 0.25. So part-time is any domestic unit that's not used year-round for the better part of the year. And then we have stock watering, so that is like 1 cow would use 0.028 acre foot. That's 25 gallons per day, and then like we already talked about the irrigation duty, okay? So those are the standard irrigation values that we use to establish a water right. So diversion is the amount that is diverted. Yes, question over here. Back on that slide.
So for irrigation, conservation's a big effort right now. If you're a farmer and you're using drip irrigation instead of flood irrigation, and you only use an acre foot, but your land calls for 4 acre foot, can that water be taken from that farmer by conserving if he doesn't use that extra water in 7 years?
So the measure of a water right is the beneficial use. So we would come in and say, where's your beneficial use? Here's your acreage. And you're still entitled. I'm getting eyebrows from Blake, but I'm going to look at Blake while I answer this question. Let's say you have 5 acres of land and you switch from sprinkler to drip, so you're using significantly less water, but you're still irrigating 5 acres. You still protect that entire water right, is that entire 5 acres, even though you're diverting less water. All you're doing is now you're allowing the junior user to get a little more of their water right fulfilled, or someone downstream of you that I'm assuming will be junior, but. So the question was, Jim, the junior user after 7 years can't come back and say, could you finish and say like, that water's now mine? That water's now mine because drip irrigation. No, so the junior users also has their limitations on their water right, and they can't exceed those. So they'll have their acreage, they'll have their flow or their volume, and that's defined, and so they can't use more than that. I think that, okay. Is there another question over here? Oh, back on the board.
So it is accurate to say, though, if your use of water on the 1 acre decreases from 4 acre feet to 1 acre feet, a farmer then should not think that they can go out and farm more acres.
That is correct, yep. So they have an acre limitation, and you can't, just because you're using less water doesn't mean I can now irrigate 6 acres from my 5.
So
You're limited to your 5.
the incentive for a farmer to use less water is crop yield, maybe through efficiency?
And there's,
Okay.
are we going to talk about Senate Bill 277?
We can touch on it lightly if you'd like to. I mean, there's
I don't want to. So there's, yeah, this is the basic introduction. So if we elevate to graduate level course today, then where are we going to go from there? But Senate Bill 277, ag optimization, allows them to have saved water, and then they can move that under a change application somewhere else. That's the gist of it. And then Blake will talk about it more tomorrow. Okay? Okay, again, but the saved water, you have to look at diversion and depletion to actually determine how much water was actually saved. Okay? I think that's a good precursor for you, Blake, if you want. Yeah, he's editing his slides right now, so. Okay, so here again we have two aspects. We have the duty, which is the diversion, and you'll have the diversion should always be higher than the depletion. If it's not, we've got problems, and we'll deal with those. Okay, so depletion is the amount of water that is consumed by the beneficial use, not returned to the system to be used by somebody else. Okay? Are there any questions about div dep? That's what we call it, div dep. No? Perfect. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go to obtaining records with the division, or where you go to call, and we're almost done. So if you want to get that prize for questions, I think we're about even. So how do you get a water right? Well, file an application, okay? So some areas of our state are open to applications to appropriate. You can file a diligence claim, again, if you have proof that the water right has been used prior to 1903, or if it's a underground well prior to 1936, and you have evidence of that to show that, you can file a diligence claim. But some areas of the state are closed to diligence claims. They have been a judge decreed, and they're closed to any new claims. So again, check our website that we do have an indication of that. Or you can use fixed time applications, which are similar to applications to appropriate, but for only a period of time, anywhere between 5 to 10 years.
I assume the closing to diligence claims occurs after an adjudication.
That's correct. So Salt Lake Valley, what other areas are closed for surezies? Okay. Yeah.
Depends on the nature.
Yeah. Okay. And Mike may talk about that in his Mike Drake in his presentation, or if not, just bring it up because he has a better knowledge of where they're closed. Okay. Probably the most prominent way that people get water rights is they purchase an existing water right, file a change application, or they purchase a contract with an entity and they file an exchange application. And the other option is just to buy land that has a water right on it. Okay, so again, water rights are pertinent to land unless severed by title. And as always, there's that there's that information down there. There's that note. Hey, make sure you're doing your due diligence. Okay, there are lots of people that purchase water rights, and they come to our office and they're like, "I need to file a change application on this," and we're like, "This is not a good water right, and here's why." And we submit that or send that to them through an order, saying why it's not a valid water right or good water right, and now they have an uphill battle to try and refute that claim or that statement by us, okay? And it's not an easy process, okay? So prior to purchasing a water right, do your due diligence and make sure it's a good water right that can be changed to meet your needs or can be used, okay? So online, we have our website, which our website does a pretty good job of depicting the water right characteristics as far as ownership, points of diversion, different things like that. Once you get into water use groups, if there's multiple water rights in a group, then it starts to get a little fuzzy on accuracy. But we have the files. The files are scanned. Go through the files, go through the documents, and make sure that what's on our database is reflective of what's on the documents. And if it's not, okay, whatever regional office that you're operating within on that water right, contact them. Okay, contact them and say, hey, your database doesn't match what's on the written document. I would like it to match. Here's what I believe it to be. Submit something to them in writing, and they will respond back to you either with the corrections or in agreement, or they'll say, yeah, it's wrong, and what you submitted wasn't exactly right, but here's what I believe it to be. And that's a good way to help us get our database up to date, because again, our database is, and there's that claim, right, that we don't guarantee that the information being presented here on this webpage is accurate. The other fun thing, if you like touching old paper, is just you can come into our Salt Lake office here or one of the regional offices and look at the hard file, because that is the official record within our division, and so that has everything that you need. Okay, so with that, I have concluded, and I am, I don't know if I'm on time or not. I feel like I'm crushing it. Any questions before I walk away? Yes, right here. He's coming with the microphone, sorry. For some reason, he sat back, way in the back. Oh, checking the time, and I'm over time.
Just a quick question on water wells. Like if I were to purchase property and needed a water well drilled, do I have to purchase a new water right, or how does that work?
So if there's already a right associated with that land, then you may not have to. But for the most part, I would say yes, you would have to. And then again, you have to kind of look at that water right, and you don't, like if you're in an area where we don't allow surface water to go to groundwater, you want to make sure that you're buying a groundwater right that can transfer over. So there are management plans, and I guarantee someone's going to talk about groundwater management plans. Nope, Jim shaking said no. So there are groundwater management plans that dictate how groundwater can move in certain areas. So again, you have to do your due diligence on that. But our office will assist you with, we won't give you advice, but we will assist you in providing you information that you request of us. But we won't say like, you should buy that one, that's a good one. We won't say that. We'll say, we'll give you the policies and procedures and help you out that way.
So, on let's say it was area 15 or something like from your map, which was for the requirement or what people would need in that area would be about 4 acre feet, right?
Yep.
So if I use an existing water right, how much would I get if I lived on section 15, which is 4 acre feet?
Are you in Tooele or are you in Rush Valley? Because that's a. So again, you have to look at the beneficial uses of the water right, and if it's for an acre of irrigation, then you'd get 4 acre feet unless there's a different duty on that particular water right. But every time I give presentations, I'm just like, oh man. Because there's so many nuances, right? And we try and talk in general terms, but it's very specific with each individual project. But again, we will provide that like if you I'm looking at purchasing this water right, can you tell me what you believe that volume to be? And if there's a document in there, we'll say, here's what the document says, and that's what we believe the volume of the water right is. Okay? Perfect. You were a little too late on the questions. You didn't win. I think this gentleman over here won. So thank you. Okay.